Do you ever wonder just how much exercise out of the cage your meat rabbits need? That's what I'm going to talk about in today's video. Get that all cleared up for you. Hey guys, welcome back to another Slightly Rednecked video. Again, my name is Chris. If you're not familiar with this channel, I help you to produce your own vegetables, meat, and eggs from your backyard, your balcony, your deck, your garage, or heck, even a spare room in your house if that's the way you want to do it. Today we're talking about meat rabbits, and specifically, how much exercise do your meat rabbits need? Now, if you talk to people, many people will tell you that you really need to get your rabbits out of their cage, give them some yard time, set up a pen in the yard, put them in there, and let them play a couple of times a week. Although that's not a bad practice, and that's certainly something that your rabbits might enjoy, it's not absolutely necessary. And again, let me clarify this all first of all by saying I'm talking about meat rabbits, and specifically meat rabbits that have been raised in cages. Now, these rabbits, like I said, have been raised in cages for generations. They're well adapted to cage life. These are not wild rabbits that were taken out of the wild and stuck in a cage. They're not pet rabbits that have been living in people's houses, roaming the house free, or living in colony settings, roaming around there free, and then suddenly stuck in cages. These have been raised, bred, raised, everything in a cage, well adapted to that. They are perfectly comfortable living their entire life inside this cage. It's what they're used to and it's what they know. Now, some of you out there may say, well, that's inhumane to leave them in that cage all the time. And you know, not really, it's not. These rabbits, like I said, well adapted to this cage, and they're actually very comfortable in their cage. You'll find that when you watch these rabbits when nobody's around, they don't express the boredom, the things that you see in other animals that are caged up that have maybe at one time been free, where they're roaming back and forth, pacing back and forth in the cage. They don't do that. They just kind of hang out. They might play with their little block a little bit, jump around a few times, but they're not really roaming the cage back and forth. And you see this guy here, he might get a little bit worked up during this video because he wants me to open the cage up and pet him. But if I get him out of the cage, he gets real stressed out. His heart starts pounding. Even if I set him down on the ground, leave him alone, boy, he's just shaking, his heart's pounding. He's not used to that environment. Now, the argument could be made that eventually he would get used to that and maybe enjoy that. And I'm not going to argue with that. I'm not going to say that's not true, but it's not absolutely necessary. He doesn't know what he's missing. He doesn't have any desire to be out there. I could leave this cage open all day long and he won't jump out. And you see he's coming up to the front now wanting some attention. So I'll pet him before I'm all done here because he does like to be petted, but does not like to be gotten out of his cage. Now again, if you've got rabbits that have been raised in colony settings where they're used to having a little bit of free room to run and some of those kinds of things, that's a different story altogether. If you take that rabbit out of that environment and put it in a cage, then yeah, it may very well get stressed out in that cage, get bored, need that time out, need to roam. Same thing with pet rabbits, with pet breeds that have been raised for the most part generations of just allowing them to free roam in houses or lots of extra playtime. Then yes, that's bred into those rabbits and they probably do need some extra exercise time. But as far as meat rabbits go that have been raised in cages for generations, there's no need to worry about it if you can't provide them with extra outdoor exercise time. Conversely, there are a few risks with providing your rabbits with some exercise, and it's not the exercise itself it's the risk, it's really the contact with the ground. You've probably heard me talk about this before, but by putting your rabbits on the ground, you are putting them at a much higher risk of contracting diseases and parasites. And I don't care where you live, it's a much higher risk. Now that's relative though, based on where you live. Some areas do not have as high of a concentration of parasites and those kinds of things. Some areas have a much higher concentration of parasites. So depending on where you live, putting a rabbit out on the pen in the ground could put it at a significant risk of contracting some kind of parasite or some kind of disease. I've talked to many people that exercise their rabbits on a regular basis, say they've never had a problem with it, but I've also talked to many people that said once they started exercising the rabbits on the cage, they started seeing high mortality rates due to parasites coming in. Coccidiosis, I always have a hard time with that word, is one of those things that's really common from rabbits that have been left on the ground for any extended period of time. And snuffles is another thing, which is a respiratory disease. It's non-curable that I've heard people complain about having issues with once they started exercising the rabbits and giving them access to the ground. That's not to say that you will have those problems if you do decide to exercise your rabbits. It's totally up to you whether you want to do that. It's just something to kind of keep an eye on. I did talk to one breeder that had been breeding rabbits for 20 some odd years. and told me that they used to exercise all their rabbits, but they had huge problems with snuffles, and now the only rabbits that they actually allow have access to the ground are rabbits that are going to be meat rabbits anyway, that are destined for the freezer. They do not allow their breeders or anything that's in their breeding stock to have access to the ground. Once it's had access to the ground, they do not allow it to go back into their breeding program because it could pass those things along to the other rabbits. So I know this is more of an opinion than a fact piece, but it is based on my experience with raising rabbits, as well as talking to many other people that have raised rabbits. I hope this clears some things up for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment below and let me know if you find something different with your rabbits. And if you didn't notice, I got a little bit of a cold. I may sound a little bit hoarse today. It's just getting over a cold. Again, thank you for watching, and as always, God bless.